So, hello and welcome everybody to another edition of the Quantum Compass. This is episode number 11. My name is Davyd Farrell, and today I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, the one and only
Bella Alvaran. Hi, everybody.
Hey, so how are you, Bella? How are you riding out the surf at the moment?
Really good. Quite intensive. The whole energy just intensified in the last few weeks, didn't it? With this Gemini, lots of information coming from everywhere. It's like there's been an acceleration.
Right, I know that we've been feeling it this week. We've had a lot of downloads, right? It's been a very information-driven week, almost to the point of too much. Like some of the download sessions have been hours, and yet at the same time,
True.
trying to process all of that information, that very Gemini rapid delivery of intel, whether it's from the astral planes, the higher dimensions, or whether it's just on our news right now. And maybe that's going to be part of the focus of what we need to transcend, because this is going to be an episode talking about the energy of the blue magnetic eagle,
That's
which is the next
correct.
wave spell in our sequence from the 12th to the 24th of June. So we've got lots of astrology to look at as well. This is a wave spell that's going to cover the in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice, and in the southern hemisphere, of course, the winter solstice, otherwise known as the Cancer Solstice. So very, very powerful energies on the cardinal points at work right now. But as always, we're going to do our usual routine, and I'm going to hand over to the Mayan expert to talk us through the energies of the wave spell that is going to encapsulate the next 13 days from the 12th.
That's correct. So let's start with the presentation then. We have a few slides to share. And so I'd like to start with the moon. We still have the same moon as we did for the previous wave spell. It's called the Crystal Moon of Cooperation, which runs from May 30th through June 26th. And I wanted to show here the diagram of the turtle, which is very well known in many cultures, really, many ancient cultures. And it's about incorporating the energy of the moon, 28 days and 13 cycles. So we moved from moon number 11 to number 12. We're still here, and we're going to continue. Number 13 is a very key number because it's the number of creation, of tones to creation. So we'll talk more about that because the whole Mayan cosmology is based on number 13. So we're getting very close to the last moon here, number 13. And this moon still has the same totem, which is the rabbit. And we've seen the energy, very sharp intellect, lots of information, very fast information, very Gemini, like what we've been experiencing. And lots of bunnies running around. I don't know if wherever you are, but I've seen hundreds of them around. So the energy is very quick, very connected to the intellect. Do you have any comments on the moon up to here?
No, I think it's very much like you said, right? It's very connected to the Gemini energy, very quick. You have to be sharp almost to keep up with it. So yeah, it feels very commensurate with what's been experiencing, I guess.
And now we'll go into the actual wave spell, which is the blue magnetic eagle. This is the glyph here. And I've talked about how the red energies are the initiators of processes, the white are the refiners, the blue are the transformers. So we're in a wave spell of transformation. And I think we'll be feeling that quite intensively. And I will talk more about that during the astrology. But this is the wave spell. It starts here with number or day 235. As you can see, we're getting very much close to the end of this Solkin. This is the wave spell before the last. And so we want to start paying attention to, okay, are you, if you're following the Solkin, make sure that you're coming to a point of finalizing. We're going to start a new Solkin in July. We'll be giving more information about that. And here on the right, we have the glyph of the blue eagle. I also mentioned the castles, which are these series of 4 wave spells, these blocks. And we're here working towards the last, this is the last castle, the green one. We're here on this wave spell and about to finish the last one, which is the star. So I hope that some of you have been following the castles because they are very practical when it comes to creating a process for 52 days, which is the 4 wave spells.
Well,
Yep.
I'm also just noticing, Bella, there from the Zolkin calendar, we've actually got 2 galactic portals in this wave spell too, right? I hadn't actually clocked that material before on day 5 and day 7. So just to point those out,
Yes,
they are the green ones.
this
Powerful
one.
days from which, and actually with the energy of the rabbit and Gemini, I would suggest these are days when we can really call forth maybe galactic information that may allow us to make a jump or a shift. And that's the beauty of the Mayan calendars. We're much more aware of these days of connection to the galactic center, even we can say, and possible other sources of information that may help us navigate through these choppy periods. We're going to talk a bit about that in the astrology, but I really see that the Blue Eagle is going to give us that opportunity to perhaps integrate and assimilate more galactic information. So just highlighting those 2 days there, day 5 and day 7.
Day 7, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the qualities of the Blue Eagle, and it has to do with vision. The Eagles Perch, that's what we're going to talk about during this whole episode, because it's what it's calling us to do. It's also connected to freedom, higher collective mind, planetary consciousness, commitment, hope, compassion, and service. And just envision the eagle as a totem as well, which is all to do with the higher perspective or the 5D perspective of things. And the shadow that we will work with during this wave spell is having subjective views or a very narrow perception of things. And remember, we're in the season of Gemini still, and so we'll be given lots of information and polarity, and we want to make sure we're having a more objective approach to things, a 5D perspective. More shadow to do with this glyph is having or being too connected or identified with the savior role, not being able to say no, loss of hope, and a sense of futility, which can happen a lot during the next few weeks because of the amount of overwhelm that could be coming our way. And this is what we want to keep in mind. The transformation for this is rise above the limitations, help raise the collective consciousness, see the higher perspective, believe in yourself and your dreams and your visions. This is the wave spell of vision. So make sure that you have clarity in where you want to end up. What is it that you want to achieve? And we're all working here for the highest good, but also for your own projects and dreams. Any comments on this wave spell? Let me just finish this part. This glyph has the action of creativity. So connect to your creativity as well during this wave spell. It has the essence of mind, connect to your higher mind, and the power of vision. Have a clear vision on where you want to go. Okay, that's it for this wave spell. Did you have any comments on this one?
Well, I mean, as we're seeing now, 11 episodes into this unfolding dialogue, we can say that we're having with the universe in general through the Mayan time wave spell containers, the Mayan mind stream, what you're anchoring here with this information, Bella, but also how we're seeing that we can have our minds or our awareness in multiple timelines, actually, in more than one moment. And I think that's super interesting that with the mechanisms of the technology that the Mayans have left us here and that our brother Jose Arguelles managed to decode for us, is that we're entering into this penultimate wave spell of this Sulkin in the Green Castle, which is the final castle, the integration point, or we could even say perhaps somehow at the elemental level representing ether, is coming to a place of culmination. And I think it's really interesting that there's only one more wave spell after this. And what I feel like we're being urged to do here with the Blue Eagle is to really use that Eagles Perch perspective, otherwise known as the 5th dimensional non-dualistic space, to rise above the more polarizing energies that we are experiencing with the Gemini sequence that we've kind of been in and will be in for some of this wave spell. It's going to start to shift during this wave spell, but we'll have a look at that in a minute with the astrology. But I think it's just amazing how coherent it is every time we do this, Bella, and I'm just amazed. And I would suggest that the wave spell that we've been in, the white magnetic wind, has been challenging. I definitely have found it a little more challenging than I expected. And maybe it's the nature of the wind, it's the nature of communication. It doesn't have such a strong an obvious container. So maybe if some of you are a bit like me, you may have got pulled a bit this way, a bit that way. I've definitely found it a little harder to stay rooted and concentrating on what I'm doing, Bella. I don't know whether you've experienced that. over the last, like particularly the last few days, but I think that's the push-pull energy of Gemini in general, and that's without even watching the goggle box. That's just reading the energies in the field and experiencing it within myself. So just wanted to share that in case some of our audience has had a little bit of a bumpy run over the last week, or I would suggest actually even since the Jupiter Cazimi, since we landed in New Earth, that 40-day cycle that we were measuring, we've been confronted with what it's like to land on a new shore in a new world, we can say, a new Earth. And if you really stop and think about that for a second, it's like, well, if you're on a voyage of discovery and you discovered a new land and your boat touched onto the shores of a beach, what does that look like? That's New Earth. That's a metaphorical, we can say, or an analogous example of what it could be like. And so if you think about it from that perspective, what would be the first things that you do? You would make a base camp, you would get yourself ready. Then you might start thinking about exploring into the jungle that is right beside the beach, or however you want to look at this. But I want to share this kind of imagery because if we think about the New Earth, and we're calling it the New Earth cuboid, so to speak, that we're in right now, how does that actually look? Well, you have to get used to it. It's a new frequency, it's a new dynamic, it's a new set of rules or instructions, you can say. And maybe that's what's caused some of this kind of push-pull, the pull of the old world still trying to keep us in that, and also the pull of the new Earth saying, hey, but this is really where it's at right now, and where are you at? And maybe some people have been getting a bit pulled backwards and forwards by that energy. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that, Bella, because that seems to me to be why we've got the Blue Eagle right now, is to help us with that process that maybe some of us have been experiencing.
Yeah, so that we can, raise above all of that chaos that is going on. It feels like the collective consciousness is overcharged. We have had a lot of geomagnetic storms, lots of information, and you know that the information goes into the field and it affects our mind. So we have a lower mind and a higher mind. The lower mind is the one that gets affected with this amount of chaos going on. So we need to be able to raise to our higher mind. Good.
Right,
And these are the reflective questions for this wave spell. It's the 13 that we normally use. It's the same ones every wave spell. So on day 1, you want to connect to identify the purpose for these 13 days. On day 2, you identify your challenge. On day 3, you identify the service. And remember that you could use this for any kind of processes. It could be moving houses. It could be relationships, it could be healing, any type of project that you may have over the next 13 days, or at least just be present reading the energy of what's going on around you.
Right, that's what I was just about to say, actually, Bella, was that if we think about using or working with that eagle energy, that ability to see more of the picture from that loftier perspective, it's not to say that if we're getting pushed and pulled, that's wrong or incorrect, or we're doing something that's that's not right. That's not the point at all. It's to be able to observe. That's exactly what we covered in chapter 2, right? Polarisation, which is the second day of a wave spell. It's tone number 2, which is looking at the challenge and seeing the challenge, and rather than getting pulled into it and getting thrown around by it, say, hey, actually the challenge is something that I can work with. And from that Eagles Perch perspective, we can see the holistic nature of the push-pull, the polarization, and say, okay, I see both sides of it. I'm not particularly this way or that way, but I know that I can work with this at an alchemical level and transform it, which of course is interesting because the eagle is the ascended version of the Scorpio energy. It's what happens when the Scorpio goes through the Phoenix process, which I'm going to talk also a little bit about because of the star that I want to just talk about in relation to this. But it's what happens when we get to that more ascended aspect and we can see what needs to be transformed and alchemized either within ourselves or life and situations around us. Okay.
And here I just wanted to mention that we want to emphasize the relevance of the course as we are about to complete the Solkin. This is there are 2 more wave spells, this Blue Eagle wave spell and 1 more, and then we'll finish this cycle. So it's a perfect opportunity for you guys interested in this material to absorb it and integrate it before we go into the new cycle, where we can jump all together and start a whole new time and cycle with more consciousness and as a collective. So with that in mind, we wanted to offer a 20% discount on this course from now until, is it the 21st? The 21st, right?
Right, so the offer is working with the 1320 principle. So for the next 13 days from today, which is day 10 of the wave spell that we're in, which is generally when we try to record Quantum Compass, until day 10 of the blue magnetic eagle wave spell, which is actually going to be the full moon in Capricorn. So a very nice way to illuminate whatever process you're stepping into. But as Bella said, and I think we're going to do a special Zolkin end of year and preview, right, Bella, maybe in the next week to 10 days, to talk about what's coming up with the Zolkin ending in July, because that's also an important moment. But as Bella said, we're really trying to anchor a new frequency of time and space here. And the more of us that are doing that, and the more of us that are working in a coherent fractal time, that will become the predominant energy on the planet. So this is a big kind of incentive, we can say, to try and encourage more of you, our wonderful viewers and listeners, to step into the world that certainly me and Bella are already existing in, and actually quite a few of our tribe members are now also existing in.
And thousands of people around the world. I mean, I didn't start this. Jose Arguelles did so much work. And there are Mayan groups from like that have inherited the knowledge. But Jose Arguelles and his work and the law of time, they went around the world in the 80s, 90s, and there are thousands of people around the world that already follow this calendar and already have a different view of what time is, and creation and manifestation and art as the constant, rather than time is money, time is art. So creating all the time your dreams and everything that you have to offer to the world.
Right, that's very true, of course. And the more of us that are in that frequency, the more coherent it will become, and the more the predominant coherent resonance or frequency that will be. And what you just said is really important, Bella, because maybe some of our audience like us are tracking what is going on a little bit in the collective energy spaces, and we can see that there are some big things happening in the world of finance and in that regard, money as well. So it's interesting that we're at this point where things are going to change, and perhaps as a collective, our emphasis is going to change away from money being the primary driving factor for most people.
Yeah, and there is a very interesting convergence here. So the Solkin is coming to an end, and the Solkin is the 260-day cycle. The moon cycle of 13 moons is coming to an end also in July. So we're going to have a fresh new start in July. And we see the astrology is also showing us that we're going and getting ready for the new thing, with Neptune at the end of Pisces, with the movements of Pluto into Aquarius. So there is a lot of energy of, okay, new cycles, get ready. And it would be great if lots of us are following the same time and creating our magic.
Right, exactly. And just to give some people watching some other markers for their calendar, the final wave spell of this Solkin is, of course, the yellow magnetic star that runs from the 25th of June to July the 7th, which will be the end of this Mayan Zolkin. So that means that the following day, on July the 8th, we start again with the red magnetic dragon, and then we get into the first castle and the first wave spell. And then, of course, we have the day out of time, which is a little bit later in the month, on the 25th of July. So a lot of big endings, beginnings happening in July. So what I'm seeing here, Bella, is that this particular wave spell we're in with the Blue Eagle is getting prepared. I think being prepared for what is coming ahead, which is lots of big changes in our world, big cycles ending, big cycles beginning. And I think the most important thing is, from the position of the eagle, this is nothing to be afraid of. In fact, from the position of the eagle, everything looks pretty good, because you can see more of the picture. When you bring yourself back down and you don't give yourself the option of the Eagles Perch perspective, you end up with a much more narrow bandwidth, I would suggest, from which to operate from, which, personally speaking, I'd rather have a much bigger bandwidth and see the total options rather than just see maybe one or two, because I feel that it gives you more room to be flexible and to navigate and to move with the flow.
Good. So let's go into the astrology now then.
Alrighty, yeah. So we talked a lot about Mercury, really, and Gemini in the last edition, because it was very, very coherent and commensurate with the energy of the white magnetic wind, which is the wave spell that we are just finishing off right now. And that energy kind of continues into really this next wave spell, at least the first half of this next wave spell. And then with the energy shifting into Cancer on the solstice, the energy starts to shift. But just to quickly run through the dates that we're not going to pull up the charts on. So we've got this Mercury in Gemini squaring Saturn in Pisces at 19 degrees to kick off the wave spell. So what to say about this? Well, I think this is a day where we have to be careful about what we think and therefore what we say. Could be a day where we want to be mindful about what we're communicating with that square to Saturn in Pisces. I want to talk a little bit about the energy of Saturn around that midpoint of Pisces a little bit too, because it's been over some very, very important stars, which some of our, this is the fixed stars, some of our audience may have seen in some of the recent Cosmic History Codes episodes that I did with Leslie, but I'll come to that a little bit later on, because I think it's an important part of some of the energy of the Blue Eagle, which is how do we get to a more consistent 5D perspective? And what does that look and feel like? Because I feel like many people are perhaps sort of ducking in and out of that frequency, Bella, but maybe not really sure what is it, and maybe not realizing that they're already in that space. So we can talk a bit more about how that energy might feel. So yeah, this is a day where the monkey mind can start to run amok. And I think that this is the danger that we see with Gemini in its lower notes, is that the monkey mind becomes the driving force rather than the valve of connection to the higher mind, which is the heart. So rather than listening to what the heart is saying, maybe we need to be careful that we're not listening to what the monkey mind or the lower mind is saying. And that often is running on information that is coming directly out of the 3D or maybe distorted 4D space rather than from the higher perspective. And so that's why it's really important to get our heart and our mind into a coherence. The mind is an amazing thing. We need it to navigate this kind of soupy space as it currently is. But at the same time, it's not the predominant intelligence that we can work with. We want to work with our higher heart mind. So that's also really important. And I feel like we could be seeing lots of different options on the table here. So if we think about Saturn providing us that structure moving forwards, I would suggest that perhaps we're going to see different types of new structures appearing, Bella, maybe even in the financial sector, as maybe one system leaves our awareness and other maybe multiple options are presented. We might need to take an Eagles Perch perspective on what resonates for us. Let's try to think of things about how it feels rather than how it sounds or how I'm hearing it in a kind of a mind space. So that's how we kick off this way. So that's day one. Just want to draw attention rather to some of our more astrologically inclined audience about a black moon Lilith flashpoint, which is happening at quite I would say, potent degree of 2818 of Virgo. And the black moon Lilith flashpoint, just to recap, is a moment where the true black moon and the mean black moon, I always get tongue twisted on those, actually come together in a moment of conjunction. It's very, very brief, often just for a few actual minutes in a day, sometimes twice in a month. I managed to track this one to the second day, to day 2, which of course is a day of polarizing energies or challenges in this wave spell. So I think that these black moon Lilith flashpoints are a moment, as we know, that where you can again call forth or put into the mix extra intentions. It's kind of like a Brucey bonus. It's like a hidden aspect of the astrology where we can call forth something we need, or we can use it as a kind of cosmic, excuse me, emailing blockchain service, and we can pop a request into that black moon Lilith flashpoint. And if we know how to track this, then it will pop out on another designated one. So it's kind of like how to send ourselves messages into the future, which we can then receive in the future from the past. Is kind of how to navigate around time. So just wanted to put that into the awareness. I think it's important. Then we go to what will be the first of the astro charts, which we'll talk about in more detail, which is another Cazimi. I think that this was perhaps the final and more hidden Cazimi in the Cazimi sequence, where Mercury and the Sun conjoin at 24 degrees of Gemini, which is conjunct, very interestingly, the star Polaris, which I'm going to talk about, very much in the energy of Gemini and many other things going on. We then have a very, very important and actually really beautiful day coming up, which I didn't do a chart for, but I do want to talk about, which is when Venus enters Cancer and is conjunct with Mercury on the 0-degree cardinal point of Cancer, right ahead of the Cancer Solstice, just a couple of days later at the same degree. So we've got this very, very powerful conjoining of energies right at the beginning of Cancer with Mercury and Venus, and then also the Sun. So do you have anything you'd like to say about the energy of Cancer? Okay, so I'll move on. And then finally, we also have the full moon on day 10, the day of manifestation, at 1 degree of Capricorn. So we're going to have a quick look at that. To be fair, the charts of the solstice and the full moon pretty much the same. I did do one for each just for visual purposes, and we will have a look at those. So perhaps we'll go now, Bella, to the June the 14th Mercury Cazimi.
Okay, we'll focus on those.
So Mercury conjoining with the sun, here we go at 24 degrees of Gemini. So I would like to offer this as an idea that perhaps it's also there with Venus as well. So we've got this kind of mini stellium all holding hands through these last degrees of Gemini and entering Cancer, where I think that the energies will start to perhaps separate more because of the different speeds of the sun, Mercury and Venus. So we've got a lot of this very inner planet energy. Obviously our friend Mars is not quite in that mixture, but is in play somewhere else, which I'll maybe talk about too. But I feel like the Mercury and the sun is a sort of a light bulb moment, Bella, a kind of like, aha, this is what all of this kind of craziness and backwards and forwards and information overload has been about. What can I do with this? And because it's got that nice kind of conjunction there, just within a couple of degrees with Venus, it can also be a message from the heart. So I think that perhaps this is where the eagle intuition, which is also another expression we can say of the heart energy from the fifth dimensional realm, maybe of the goddess energy, can start to infuse whatever these ideas are. And I feel like we're being encouraged to express the message of who we are. Who are we after all of these things that we've been through already? Because we're coming up to the halfway point of the year, which is pretty incredible. I certainly know that 2024 has been a pretty far out year for me and not quite what I expected. Which, by the way, I'm going to be sharing more about, Bella, in the coming weeks. Is more about the journey that I've been on from a more Eagles Perch perspective in order to work through my healing process. So do watch out for that. That's going to come out on YouTube on QPW from a healing perspective, how to work with your mind for healing. So I feel like, that's also been part of it, Bella, working with the Mayan glyphs, working with the Mayan time. Speaking for myself, I know that I'm much more comfortable now with my, I would say, my Mayan energy, my skywalking energy. It's helped me understand my life. It's helped me become more grounded in who I am and what my mission here is as the skywalker. It's bringing 5D down to 3D. So a lot of this show really is me living my mission code. So I think that that's really beautiful. So again, just wanting to point to people that, if you haven't had an activation maybe with your mind glyph, definitely recommend checking in with Bella about that, because many people that already have, we're seeing incredible things happening for them, right, Bella, that they're really kind of accelerating in their growth and, I would say, understanding of themselves.
Yeah, there's been very beautiful feedback coming from the people that got activated with their Mayan glyph, with their galactic archetypes, with their wave spell, knowing when the next galactic birthday is coming, how can they use the energy. So yeah, really good feedback. On this chart, I like to share that it also supports the idea of the amount of polarity by coming from politics and from lots of different sources, and trying to polarize us with lots of information. And the only way forward is to come back into the heart and make sure that we can have good relationships and be very diplomatic when it comes to having two perspectives presented. And remember that it's all just a matter of perspectives. We need to be able to rise above and see that everybody's going to see things in a different way. And so let's do it with good relationships, with lots of communication, and just allowing everybody to have their point of view.
Right, good point. And also, as you're just saying that, I'm scanning around the chart, and what's catching my eye is, of course, that there's that square there to Black Moon Lilith down at 28 degrees of Virgo, which I think is also something to remember, that we're looking perhaps at the polarization even of the masculine and feminine that I know we've been talking about quite a bit, and also something that we cover in chapter 2 of the Navigation Guide to Quantum Consciousness. And we've just passed through, or we will be over the next day or so, around the time of this episode coming out, a series of squares, which we can see still going on with Saturn over there at 19 degrees of Pisces. But what I really wanted to also point to, Bella, and it's not on this chart, is that at 24 degrees of Gemini, there is a big star called Polaris, which for our Stellar Nations listeners will obviously resonate. But to sum up what we can say, this is a star that carries the energy of polarity and is also very, very much connected actually in that tradition and that pathway to the energy of, we can say, the tech, the fallen arthropod energy, the ETs. So I would like to suggest that what we're looking at here is a polarization in the narrative. The narrative as presented through the goggle box is something that is tech driven. It's driven, I believe, by that kind of AI extraterrestrial energy, which holds up the matrix. The matrix is pretty much an extraterrestrial projection, we can say. So I feel like, as many other channels and presenters are also saying, is like, is it obvious yet that we're watching a movie, that we're in some sort of simulation? At what point do we let go of that? So I think it's really interesting that kind of Mercury, the messenger, with our friend and big brother Solano, or El Sol, is kind of hitting that big star of polarization and saying, hey, are you getting this yet? Are you still caught in the polarization? Are you still believing the images, the narrative that are being given to you? Or are you believing in yourself? Are you believing in what you feel? And if so, are you living from that space? And if not, well, just so happens that we're in the energy of the blue magnetic eagle, so you can work with that energy to lift above it. And this is actually on day 3, Bella, of the wave spell. And as we are about to release in chapter 3 of the navigation guide to quantum consciousness, rather, that's actually looking at the energy of activation and electrification. So it's kind of like how to initiate the ideas. So I would like to invite
Which is really good. It's
Yeah.
really good because look at the trine that Pluto and Uranus have there. So it's like the electricity coming from Uranus is supporting, you know, let's go through the change. Let's go through the transformation, Pluto is saying. And Jupiter is there also doing a trine with Pluto saying, yeah, let's expand all of this transformation now.
Right, so I was just going to say, like to invite our audience to contemplate the energies that are taking place on June the 14th as a really, really amazing day to initiate, ignite, electrify whatever it is that's been bubbling up within you, and to not allow yourself to get pulled into, I'm not going to do this because it doesn't make sense, or people have told me it's a bad idea. Don't listen to anybody else. Do what feels good for you. Do whatever has come up and arisen within you, and perhaps it's something you're going to communicate to the world. Hey, this is actually really who I am, and I'm going to share now what an amazing person I am and what I have to share with the world. It's okay for us to do that. And I think actually in the world to come, Bella, we're going to be encouraged to operate from that space, to be the most amazing aspect of ourselves that we possibly can be.
Yes, and we'll give even more tips in the navigation guide to quantum consciousness. Good. You wanted to talk about Pakal Votan.
Well, yes and no. I could have chosen a number of sarcophaguses to choose from. I could have been Egypt, but I thought, well, this is the quantum compass. There's a very strong Mayan focus. So let's go to the great man himself and look at his very, very famous lid of his sarcophagus, which many people have said is some sort of spacecraft or machinery or something like this. Now, I do have to check my notes for this because it's a little more precise. But when myself and our friend and guide from the Stellar Nations Pathway, Leslie Shankman, did the Cosmic History Codes episode. Let me check my notes. Episode number 4, when Mars was conjuncting Saturn at around 14, 15 degrees of Pisces. There is a very powerful star there called Akamar, which is really where there is a big initiation, which is the initiation into 5th dimensional consciousness, which is really summed up as how we pierce the darkness with our own inner light. Now, interestingly, in the ancient cultures, they knew about this. It's kind of written about in various books as a 3-day experience, normally often using very, very strong plant medicine, where an initiate, hopeful, is put into a sealed tomb or rock-cut chamber, or we can even say a sarcophagus, similar to this one, or the one that's in the king's chamber in the pyramid. There is some sort of death process initiated. The person then experiences what it's like to have their consciousness still very much as they are, but somehow outside of their body. I'm now thinking that this sarcophagus lid is the man himself, Pakal Votan, piercing his own darkness with his own inner light, and thus ascending back to his more 5th dimensional perspective. Now, that's how they used to do it in the old days, several thousand years ago. We're now in a different cycle. There's a lot more light on the planet. We don't necessarily have to put ourselves into a sealed sarcophagus for 3 days to have this experience. But what I do want to suggest with the astrology on the 14th is that we've been given an opportunity here to go into the dark, we can say, very similar to this space, and receive the insights that are coming from the universe and from this Mercury Cazimi, so that we can pierce whatever is remaining of our own shadow space and kind of ascend, we can say, to the more lofty 5D perspective of the eagle. So I just wanted to share that because Saturn is bouncing around backwards and forwards over this star and is about to go into retrograde for a little while. So it's just a couple of degrees off Akamar, which is at 15 degrees 39 of Pisces, and Saturn is now currently at 19, but it is going to retro back over this point in the coming weeks. And so again, it's going to be in orb probably for maybe a month or two, I would suggest. And it's also going to go over another star called Anchor, which is the eye of the phoenix, which I think is super cool because that's about the mystery of death and rebirth and the light at the end of the tunnel, which is exactly what we've been talking about from the April 8th total solar eclipse to the Jupiter Cazimi. So what I'm understanding from these links and decoded elements, Bella, is that we're at that point where it's like, have we learned everything that's been shown to us already this year? Have we learned from the processes of the last 4 years? Many of the characters that we can say we've seen a lot of over the last 4 years, maybe some of the more nefarious ones are now in front of us again, but for different reasons. And I feel like those narratives have now started to fully unwind or unravel, we can say, and perhaps we're getting to see the illusion, because that's the other thing coming up with the full moon is that Neptune is in play. There is a square going on at the full moon with Neptune. So that's on the slides we're about to come to, but Neptune is really offering us the potential, I feel, at 29 degrees of Pisces. It's like, okay, this is the totality of the illusion, Neptune in 29 degrees of Pisces. Are you ready to see the totality of the illusion? Can you handle the truth? Do you want to handle the truth? Or have you seen enough already and you've got the picture and you're ready to move on? Or do you need to have your face dunked back into the soup so that you really get it? So we're definitely coming to, I would suggest, a crunch moment. And depending on where we are in our journey, I think is going to probably result in how we experience this next month or two, Bella.
Some people that have studied this lead say that this is a phoenix. If you look at it from the other way. So this here would be the phoenix bird. Good. Let's go.
I've seen some pretty cool pictures that you've sent me of people that have done reconstructions into 3D models. And it looks like a spaceship, I'm not going to lie. But, you know, I would like to suggest that maybe Pakal had fun with this in his fifth dimensional self and created a spaceship for himself to travel into other realms with. And he just decided to use that as his image for his sarcophagus lid. But, you know, when we think about traveling into other realms, there is a big initiation that we have to go through. It's part of it. And our ancestors did it to ascend. Jesus, I think, tried to show us on the crucifix or on the total eclipse that happened then that we can skywalk in and out and we can change our consciousness. He did it in the rock cut tomb to resurrect, and then 40 days later went into his own ascension process. So I feel that we're very much at that point of choice into death and rebirth. Are you ready to let go into whatever is coming next? Because if you are, boom, we're already here. We're on the shores of New Earth, and some of us are already setting up camp and waiting for you to join the party. We've got the bottles of bubukas, the bubbles, the bubbly out, and we're like, hey, let's have a party because it's time to start building what we all want in our hearts. But before we get to that place, we need to understand that we're actually there. Otherwise, it could be a little confusing, which I feel is a bit more of that kind of polarized Gemini energy. So is there anything you wish to say around that, Bella? It was kind of a bit of a blurt there from me.
Well, more about the Cancer energy, which obviously we have Venus and Mercury there. It tells me about maybe communicate your emotions at this point, have open conversations, still keep the Eagles Perch on the perspectives, but do open yourself to those conversations, especially with the families, with at home, I would say. I'd say that's part of what is coming, the nurturing, the mother energy, all of that.
Right, you know, and thank you for just highlighting it, because it's just alerting me again to what I did share briefly, was that just a few days before that, we have Venus entering Cancer and having that nice little conjunction there. But by the time we get to the summer solstice, we can see that that the energies are now forming a nice sextile with Mars over in Taurus. So Mercury and Venus both sextiling Mars is a good energy, and I feel like it's going to give us the opportunity for portals of manifestation to open, which I think is a really beautiful way to think about this. And it's a time to bring our creations or our intentions to life. So again, we're getting this very strong energy of like letting go of the old so that we can really rebirth or birth in the new. And according to where our attention is, we'll probably dictate how that looks for us. But with this wonderful energy of Venus entering Cancer on the summer solstice or around just before that time, then I feel like we're giving an extra boost to that energy.
And let's remember all of the sites, we talk about this in the course, but most of the sites of the Mayan culture, they're all aligned to these solstices and equinoxes and even to some constellations. So very important day of alignment within ourselves, with the planet, and with the sun.
Right, and also just to just loop back something I missed there with the Saturn energy as it retros back. By the time we get to the Lionsgate portal, that wonderful energetic sequence on the 8th of August, the 8-8, Saturn will be back over those stars again, those stars of initiation and of the Phoenix. So we still got a little bit of time to pull our affairs into order, I would suggest. But it's like what I'm really feeling, Bella, from my own journeys over the last couple of weeks is that because we've shifted timelines, cuboids, however we want to look at this, we are now in a much more light infused prism around, or a fifth dimensional grid around the planet. And so what that's doing is kind of squeezing slowly but surely any dense energy out. And so it has nowhere to go, which I think is why we're starting to see some very incoherent narratives coming at us through the goggle box. Things really just don't stack up at all anymore, and people are double talking even in their own rhetoric, to the point that, but you just contradicted yourself there, and you're contradicting yourself from really quite seemingly important things. So what am I meant to think about that? What I would suggest is that we're watching the implosion of the narrative, because it has nowhere to go. It can't pull any more stunts. It doesn't have any more support. So it's being squeezed. But that's also true at the micro level, which is the personal level, which is where, as we move on to this next slide, if we could, Bella, can
I just say
yeah,
here that because the US is also of the sign of Cancer, I think a lot of communication, as we've been seeing, from different, from politics, from financial stuff, money situations with Venus there. So I think a lot of emphasis here in the US energy coming forward. And let's remember that the eagle is also the bird for the US, is the totem. So this blue eagle seems to be quite relevant for the US as well.
right, that's very true. And yeah, I forgot where I was going now. So as we come to this, as we come to the full moon in Capricorn, which we can see here at 1 degree and roughly 7 minutes of Capricorn, opposing the sun, of course, in Cancer, sorry. And also, I think, again, we can see a little more clearly here that there is quite a challenging, we can say, square being created here with, on the one hand, Neptune down at 29 degrees of Pisces, but also up there, again, we can see that Black Moon Lilith at 29 degrees of Virgo. And that wasn't in my awareness until I looked at this chart just now. And I think that that's also pushing the point. It's like forcing what I just talked about, that density. It's like this has to be transformed. It can't go anywhere. And the more it gets contorted and imploding, the more painful it's going to become energetically, emotionally, even physically. So if you have stuff coming up for you brothers and sisters out there watching this show, please really take the opportunity to work with it, transform it, use that perhaps polarizing energy to transform, and use the dynamic kinetic energy that's being created with that transformation to fuel your own projects into your own personal death and rebirth process. So I feel like that's where that square to Neptune in Pisces, Bella, is really forcing us to say, look, come on, guys and gals, are you getting this? Do you see the incoherency of what we're leaving behind, so that we can step into something that's much more coherent, much more fractal, much more natural?
This also tells me that there is like a reset and rebalancing of the masculine and feminine energy, even in the planet. So after all of this polarization, it feels like the planet is going through a full reset of those polarities, because we've been called to make choices with so much information. So this higher perspective is super important, so that we don't keep the polarization moving forward within groups, within politics, within families, or anything like that. We need to be able to balance those two.
And how do we do that best? Well, I would like to suggest is that we don't allow ourselves to get triggered or attached to any of the energies that would cause that, which is, again, where we have the benefit of the blue magnetic eagle energy to rise above those triggering situations, those polarities that we might be encountering, because Capricorn is largely also about focusing on managing our responsibilities. It's about mastery. It's about how are we handling ourselves, right? So we're entering into this energy of Capricorn here, because this is the first of 2 Capricorn moons. The second one comes up on July the 21st, which I think is pretty interesting. That's also, I think, the day after the first wave spell of the new calendar year. So whatever is happening on this Capricorn full moon, weirdly, because we're going to have 2 Capricorn full moons, just separated by a month or so, is going to conclude with that Capricorn full moon. So this is kind of unique, Bella, and if I'm understanding correctly, because the calendar's kind of got a little wonky on the moons with that axis points, but because we're going to have these 2 in Capricorn, it's going to rebalance, interestingly, recalibrate the lunar cycle back into its normal format that it was up until about a year and a half ago. I think it was when we had the Scorpio Taurus full moons that things got thrown slightly out. It's been a slightly strange one, because normally they follow a sequence, and they haven't been doing that. They've been slightly different. So just putting that into people's awareness too. Just let me consult my... Yeah, so it's July the 21st, and that will be at 29 degrees of Capricorn at the beginning of the White Wizard wave spell.
Wow.
So if I'm reading this correctly, it tells me that we've got these 2 full moons to really initiate magic. Capricorn is about mastery of all of these things, including ourselves. It comes after Sagittarius for a reason, and Sagittarius comes after Scorpio for a reason. You know, these are the signs that are really taking us into the world of transformation, of energy, of alchemizing ourselves. And by the time we get to Capricorn, we should be having a better handle on ourselves and how to do this energy in our life, which of course is what you've been teaching with the Mayan Time and Magic course, and what we're also sharing in a different format, but similarly with the Navigation Guide to Quantum Consciousness. So,
But Capricorn is also connected to governments and banking and institutions. And this weekend, there is a BRICS meeting going on, and lots of countries gathering. And remember that because we're in this solstice, full moon and solstice at the same time, I feel it as a reset. It could be a new financial reset because this is on the public stage. On the world axis, so it could affect the whole world. And look at the moon in Capricorn, so maybe really big moves in the financial area and big currency moves, with Venus also being part of it. So maybe we'll hear some news around all of this.
well, as you've just said, and we generally don't like to get too much into the narrative of the collective, but there are certain things that are going on in this regard. And one of the big corporate deals that was done was with the petro dollar in Saudi Arabia, which is coming to an end this coming week. So we can see that there is going to be some significant changes to world currency one way or the other. And I think that what we're being urged with this Capricorn energy really, and even with this show as a preview, is get prepared, everybody. This is not a doom and gloom exercise. Being prepared is not being stupid or down. It's just being smart, I think. And I think that maybe with this energy, Bella, there's a little bit of like, be realistic. Don't be pessimistic. That's not helpful, but be realistic and make sure that you're prepared and ready to deal with anything.
Mm-hmm. And remember that Saturn is still the ruler of this full moon. And so it could be to do with those limitations, regulations, restrictions. So let's see what's to come with all of those things. I'd say, again, higher perspective is where we need to keep our vision.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope that our audience always tries to, or always understands that we try to present the energies as we see them, with the possibilities that are incoming with the astrology, how they tie in with the Mayan wave spell, but also to also lean into the energies that we experience as journeyers, as medicine people, as spiritual people. You know, we have our own intuitions, our own downloads, so we try to weave in where they feel like they make sense. And I do feel like we're being encouraged to let go of the things that don't serve us, and to make sure that we're not too attached to anything that could cause us suffering, is to make sure that we've got flexibility in our life so that we can move with whatever the flow of the bigger river is, whatever that looks like. And it may be to do with finances in the near future.
And I'd say, without any fears, try to infuse the collective consciousness with your vision of the new earth, of the new world. What do you want for yourself and for the collective that will make a difference, where there will be no worries, where everybody will have what they need, what the earth is taken care of, like we don't destroy the resources or see everything as resources. So let's start putting all of our visions, our collective visions of a better world and a new earth.
Right, I love that. And also maybe just as a finishing note on that, with Ceres in retrograde during these two Capricorn full moons in Capricorn, she doesn't actually cross over either of them. She's sort of somewhat wedged in between them. You know, I feel like we're being offered the opportunity to say, hey, are you actually ready to let go of the old paper money system and all of the inadequacies and injustices that provides, so that we can actually welcome in something that's much more equal, much more just, much more abundant for everybody, which I think is what you're alluding to with some of the meetings that are happening in the world right now that are looking to introduce a different type of system. And perhaps there are going to be competing systems, Bella. Maybe we're going to have to feel into our heart space to feel which one feels good for us. So again, these are all possibilities.
I don't like to think of competing, but more like collaborating. Why don't we put that vision there? Like the words that we use are also super important. So if you're calling in those words that are of division, then that's what we're calling in. So we need to be very mindful of our words and our vision all the time.
Right, good point. Yeah, so again, it's down to personal perspective and how we observe what is being offered to us. Maybe other people don't see it that way, but that's not for us to worry about. So I think that's really that's it for the astrology. But I'm just scanning over to see. Yeah, and also just as a final nice thought, you know, with the energy in Cancer, it's very much about the home and the garden. This is a time to maybe invite some friends over, have a nice meal, maybe spend some time in the garden. If it's not too hot wherever you are, maybe to start growing some nice plants, some medicine plants. And obviously this is what we're going to talk about today. And depending on where you are in the world, you might have to be a little cautious about the legality of that. But Bella, what is for those who can't guess, what is our plant of this wave spell?
It's the beautiful cannabis plant, and depending on the content of THC, they might call it hemp, or they might call it other well, different names depending on the variety. But what I want to mention here, when it comes to this plant, is that we are full of receptors in our body, in our immune cells, our immune system, our central nervous system, our bones. Many of our cells have the receptors for this plant. And one of the things that I want to emphasize is that even Zach mentioned it in the last call we had with him, is that once we incarnate in this planet, we are part of the planet, and we're connected to the plants, and we're connected to the animals. We have like 94% similar genetics to a dog. Or like 96 or 98 to a monkey. And then it's crazy numbers to fruits. We're like 60% similar genetics to a banana or something like that. So when we understand that we are so connected, so we see how we can all collaborate and help each other, and how those receptors are actually there for a reason. And this is why we want to talk about this amazing plant today.
Right, and you know, there is so much to talk about this wonderful plant that goes by many different names, which we generally call Santa Maria, but its technical name is cannabis, and there are many different varieties of that, including sativa and indica, and many sub-varieties. Now, this is a plant that's worked with for a very, very long time. Many parts of the world, it's had a stigma attached to it. I think that's also part of the energy that is shifting, Bella, because for me, cannabis is a plant that really embodies the love and creativity of the goddess. And many of us are feeling the return of the goddess energy, and have been really, I would say, over most of the course of this year, but it came back so strongly on that Venus Cazimi that we just had a few days ago. And the mother plant, the goddess, the spirit of this plant is very much in the field of the collective, because it's here to help us. Now, as you said, and I think we're going to do a much deeper dive on this wonderful plant towards the end of August. Something is coming through from the beautiful Santa Maria, and she's certainly urging me to put something together to explore the breadth of what this plant has to offer us, because as you said, we have cannabinoid receptors in our bodies. So it's like we're hardwired to receive the beauty of this plant, right? And I can see on cue, you've done a nice slide for us about this.
The internet has a lot of aids, so
Right.
I'll just give credit to the internet with some of those. So yeah, it's just a quick cannabinoid guide. As a scientist, I did quite a bit of research on the different cannabinoids, and it has so many different compounds. And a cannabinoid is a group of chemical compounds that are part of the plant, and they have different effects. And so here the most common ones are CBD, CBG, and CBC, which are the ones that don't have a psychoactive effect. And I'll talk a little bit about what are the good qualities or benefits of those. And then we have CBN, THCV, and THC, which are the ones that do have a psychoactive effect. So we need to be able to differentiate CBD versus THC. CBD, no psychoactive effect. THC is the one that gives you the feeling high type of effect. So, and it all depends on the content of THC, which is this compound. If it's 0.3%, or less, then you can work with this plant and you won't have any of those effects. And some of the amazing things that you can use the CBD for is an anti-inflammatory. It aids with sleep. It relieves anxiety. It's an antioxidant, antibacterial, antidepressant, muscle relaxant. It works really well in cases of epilepsy. And this is not medical advice. This is just some research. It reduces nausea, decreases seizures, chronic pain. I mean, it has so many amazing qualities. Rheumatoid arthritis, it helps with that, to reduce the growth of cancer cells. So there is a lot out there, and you can go and do some more research. But CBD, even my mom, like, she was having lots of pain with her articulations, her back pain and everything. And since she's been doing the CBD oils, she's just amazing. She's really happy and back to dancing and doing lots of fun things. So yeah, and the other one that I highly recommend, so CBD and also CBG, it has very similar qualities to the CBD, but it works really well on the bones as well. Lowers the blood pressure. I mean, it has so many. It also helps fighting tumors. It's also antidepressant, helps with anxiety. I've worked with most of them, but those two are pretty powerful, really good. And, you know, it's the kind of thing you can buy an oil, a CBD oil, and it's going to be okay. But if you can have a plant or just call the spirit of the plant, it's going to start awakening within you all of those amazing benefits.
Right, it really is an amazing plant, and there is a lot to say about it, hence why I'm getting the nudge to do something a little more in depth later in the summer, which will come through when it wants to. But in the meantime, of course, we have to be responsible here and say that this is a plant that still has some legal issues in some countries. So if you're in one of those countries, please be careful about how you obtain it within those legal guidelines. However, of course, it is being freed up in many countries and even states in the US now in different ways. And I have mixed feelings about that too. But if we're just talking about the plant in general, we have all of these wonderful body medicines that Bella's just talked about. But also, and this is one of the other reasons we included it, is that it's very much a plant of the fifth dimension, a plant of the goddess, and a plant that allows us to
higher 5D vision. Yeah.
Exactly, of the higher 5D vision. And there are many different ways to imbibe this medicine. It doesn't always have to be through the traditional hippie route of smoking it. We can say that we can also enjoy types of edibles and oils and even salves that we can apply topically to the skin.
I mean, the salves that I gave you for your recovery of the legs were amazing. They had cannabis and they had arnica, and that was a very powerful one. And you could feel it because you were talking to the plant. You were able to feel the effects and the help from the plant.
Right, so that's what I was alluding to earlier in the show, is I'm going to be sharing more about my journey and the medicines that have helped me, the homeopathic remedies that have helped me. But I have to say that the combination of cannabinoid or cannabis with arnica in a salve form applied topically was incredibly healing for me, particularly post-op. And it also allowed me very, very gently to access, not in a very, very full-on kind of way, but it allowed me to gently access some of my higher dimensional mind so that I could process everything that was happening around the time of the accident and even the healing process, and to allow me to feel very succinctly what was going on in my feet and to work with it from my higher mind perspective, because it's really been my mind that has healed the feet, or is in the process of healing the feet. So a lot to say about that, Bella, and we'll be talking more about this wonderful plant. But as a final thought, yes, call the spirit of the plant in and work with it in whichever way comes to you, and yeah, just be open to what the goddess wants to share through this beautiful plant.
Yes. We're coming to the end of the show. This slide is to remind you of the 13-part journey called The Navigation Guide to Quantum Consciousness, which is a galactic atlas for New Earth. And it's a collaboration between Davyd and myself. We're putting together 13 steps, 13 chapters. Chapter 1 and 2 have already been released, and we're about to record chapter 3, hopefully in the next few days. So very good feedback as well. It's a journey that is going to help you reach your quantum consciousness, but also manifest and create something, especially if you have a dream or a vision at this moment.
Right. And for those who haven't yet tuned into that process, as Bella said, it's available on quantumplanet.world at the address there, quantumplanet.world/galactic atlas. Each video is purchasable for just $26 and can be accessed time and again at your own leisure. But as it's unfolding, we're releasing each chapter every 13 days. And as Bella said, the next chapter will be coming out with the commencement actually of the Blue Magnetic Eagle, and will be about, Bella, what's topic or chapter number 3 entitled? What's the current title?
Chapter 3 is the spark of light. We're going to get electrified, get our projects electrified. How do we bring the energy into the manifestation and creation process?
Right, which is exactly what I was alluding to earlier with that wonderful Mercury Cazimi happening on day 3 of the Blue Magnetic Eagle. So when I put all of those pieces together, to me, that seems like a day where we can really activate our 5th dimensional energy visions, or we can say ideas or prayers, however that is, using these methodologies that we're laying out. And so what we're doing, Bella, really, I guess, is we're deep diving on each of the different tones of each of the 13 days of a wave spell, right? And seeing how this can relate in easy to understand layman's terms, and how you can work with lots of different motifs to really activate not just each day of a 13-day wave spell, but also the much longer cycles, maybe within a castle, maybe within a whole Zolkin. So this is where we're getting kind of clever and pulling in different timelines and working across time and space in a very, very coherent, magical way. So we hope that many more of you can join us on that journey, right?
Yes. So I think this is the end of our show. We definitely want to encourage you to connect with the energy of the eagle, the blue eagle, keep the higher perspective, call in the spirit of the plant, if it's a plant that you feel you want to connect to. And the astrology is just telling us more of the same, and be very conscious in your choices. Avoid polarity and division, and less subjective, more objectivity, I think is what it's calling us.
Aho to that. So thank you everybody for joining in, or joining us rather, for today's episode of the Quantum Compass. Thank you to Bella, as always, for putting together the Mayan side of that. And as we move forwards, yeah, let's really be in that Eagles Perch perspective, that higher vision place of seeing, let's say, more of the picture and operating with more information, more of ourselves present, and less of the polarizing energy. But if we do see the polarizing energy, as we've already shared, Bella, we can work with it, right, as a catalyzing force. So there is nothing that can't be used for your own benefit, even things that are challenging. And I think as we get to explore more of the new Earth cuboid or 5D frequencies, we're going to understand that we're actually in a huge playground, a user-friendly environment, as we've said before. So I think that that's the way I'm moving forwards. That's what I'm excited about. I know you are too, Bella. And hopefully by listening to this show and many other inputs, all of you out there are also moving into that space too, and rising above whatever may be the challenges that are around us in the world right now, because that's also something that we need. We need to have those challenges to allow us to evolve and transform. So
yeah, and let's remember the bigger picture. Let's keep our eyes on the prize, which is a new earth and what we want. Keep on putting that vision out there. If you have a project that is going to help lots of people, if you have a project that is going to help the earth, if you have something that is going to benefit lots of people, let's keep on pumping that. And that is eyes on the prize. There's where you want to end up. And now, hopefully, with these tips and navigation guides that we're putting together, we're trying to help lots of people to do more of that.
right, exactly. So with that, everybody, thank you very much. We're going to take the Eagles Perch perspective and fly away and review what it is that we want to bring forth into the world in these coming days, weeks, and months. And definitely inviting all of you to do the same, and hoping that we'll be able to meet many of you very, very soon. We have lots of our own exciting creative ideas that are coming through, which we hope to be able to share in due course, because that's the world that we live in. It's a world of possibilities and creative ideas and potentiality. So we'll see you again very soon, everybody. In the meantime, take it easy, and we'll see you for the next round of the Quantum Compass in just under a fortnight's time. Ciao for now.
Have a great wave spell. Bye.